good morning. We want to welcome you on this beautiful Sabbath day. And we're going to ask you to stand with us now and sing some praises out to our God. We're going to begin with the energy that's going to bring the Holy Spirit here to this place today. So let's begin by standing and singing, Jesus the same, always the same, there for us.
Today and forevermore. No other name that can save, deliver, and restore. Oh, Jesus the same, yesterday, today, and forevermore. There is no other name that is greater than Jesus. Forevermore. No other name that can save, deliver, and restore. Oh, Jesus the same, yesterday, today, and forevermore. There is no other name that is greater than Jesus. Oh, 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 oh.
Again, we want to just welcome you into our service. We want to give a special welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time. And we also want to give you a special welcome if you're joining us online today. We hope that you're in your living room, wherever you are in your home, singing along with these praises to our God. He is trustworthy. He is loving. He's giving. All those beautiful names of Jesus, right? He is there for us all the time, and we want to just open our hearts to him today.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song, 'cause you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. One more time. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
You're never,
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
Jesus, you're never.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh. He's never gonna let you go. He's never gonna let you down. Oh, your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I hear your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest nights, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life, and all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. Sing it out. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Yes, I
Good morning, church. It is the time in our service where we join in prayer. You may join me in the front, but stay seated or kneel where you are if it is more comfortable. If you are viewing online, please feel free to comment or message us your prayers and praises. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us this day to gather. Thank you for giving us this day to rest and to take a break from our often busy weeks. Thank you for the chance to talk with you today. To us, our problems, questions, and worries appear so small and trivial when compared next to you, Lord, and yet you do not see them as unimportant, as inconveniences. We are reminded by you here in this building that you do listen, you do acknowledge our prayers, and that your presence is always near. So I ask that you make your presence known to those who have brought the troubles and worries of their lives to do today. Lord, comfort those who worry, who feel fear and stress in their lives and feel there is no escape. Let them know that you are there, that you are the light with them in the darkness, and that you will protect and guide them through difficult experiences. Lord, I ask you to soothe those with guilt or regret, who may feel that they are unworthy or have strayed too far from you. Father, you know that no matter how far we have turned from you, there is nothing that can separate us from your love, and that is never late to turn back to you. Everyone is worthy of your love. Lord, comfort those who may be weary or tired. There may be some of us who have not felt rest all week, and there may be those who have had weariness above them for a long time. I ask you to provide sanctuary and calm to each person in this building, especially now that we realize that summer is ending. Provide rest to our students, teachers, and families as the season and routines begin to change. You have the power, Lord, to give us strength and allow us to overcome the upcoming adversities we may face. Help us to reflect on ourselves with you, to be patient with one another, and lastly, to remember that we are all your children. Keep us safe, and thank you for all you have done and will do. In your name we pray. Amen.
Narrow as the road may seem, I'll follow where your spirit leads. Broken as my heart may be, I will give you every piece. I hear your call, I am available. I say yes, Lord, I am available. Here I am with open hands, counting on your grace again. Less of me and more of you. I just want to see you move. I hear you call, I am available. I say yes, Lord, I am available. I hear you call, I Let's sing to church. Here I am, here I am. You can have it all, you can have it all. Here I am, here I am. You can have it all, you can have it all. Here I am,
Here I am.
you can have it all, you can have it all. Here I am,
Here I am.
you can have it all, you can have it all. Here I am, here I am. You can have it all,
You can have it all.
here I am, here I am.
You can have it all.
You can have it all. For the one who gave me life, nothing is a sacrifice. Use me how you want to, God. Have your throne within my heart. I hear you call. I am available. I say, yes, Lord, I am available.
Well, good morning. Hey, today we're wrapping up a message series called This and That. It's been a series about a lot of stuff. And so today we're going to cover one more little bit of that stuff as we get here. But if it's your first time with us or first time back in a while, we are glad you're here. You just came at kind of an inopportune time because it's right at the end of this. So I encourage you to go online and catch up on all the other stuff that we've been talking about. But today we're going to talk about something that is so big we can get lost in its bigness. And what that thing is simply this. Now, here's something I know. And if you've been around, I hope you recognize this too, is that normally about this time of the year, we do a message series on parenting, right? Because back to school and the whole rhythm and, things to think about, things to talk about. And normally that's how it works. But while a lot of you have been on vacation this summer, most of the pastors have not. So we're all going to try to scramble over the next couple of months here to squeeze all of our vacation in because it gets really busy around here in November and December, right? And so we're all going to catch up. So we're not going to do a series this year. I'm actually going to try to cram a whole series into today. So here we go. Everybody take a deep breath. Say, help me, Jesus, and we'll get going, all right? Here's something I know. Parents, as parents, we are continually bombarded with advice, right? Everybody has advice. You're at the grocery store and your kid says something or does something and somebody has some advice for you, right? If your kid's playing sports, somebody's, oh yeah, your kid does this really good, but they need to work in, you got to go see this coach. There's always, we're bombarded with all this advice. I mean, think about all the things, there's advice on how we should feed our kids, right? Advice on how we ought to discipline them, how we ought to school them, and also just simply how we ought to raise them. So here's the bad news for you if you are currently parenting. Everyone seems to have an opinion on everything, so here's another one. But before we get there, I want to invite you to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Father, the truth of it is, whether we are actively parenting or passively parenting or sort of pseudo-parenting, or we just simply have parents, there is stuff about this that at times drives us to our knees because it's about relationships more than anything else. And so today, for all of us, those of us with really good relationships with our parents or with our kids, and those of us with not so good relationships with our parents or our kids, I pray that you can use something today to not just speak to each of us, but to help each of us, to give us something to do that role that we have in life that is such a big role in a better way. Better for them and better for us. And if we can leave here today with something that helps us, this will have been some time well spent. In your name, amen. Now, if you grew up around a church, there's a passage when people like me talk about topics like parenting. And it actually comes from a part of the Bible called Proverbs. And Proverbs are these interesting things. Sometimes people hear these statements and they say, especially this one, and people say, oh, that's a promise. I follow that and now my kids are going to do this. But I'll remind you of something really important when you read this part of the Bible. And that is simply that a proverb is an observation about how things usually work, not a guarantee of how things will be. You need to keep that in mind because it's simply an observation. It's an important observation. It's about how things generally work if you follow these plans. But it isn't like a guarantee. If I do this, this is going to happen. And so here's the passage that, again, if you've been around a church very much, you've heard before. And it's simply this. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Train children to live the right way. In their path is the literal words. And when they are old, they will not stray. They will not depart from it. Again, if you've been around church long enough, you think, it's train up a child, right? In the way they should go. And then when they get old, they're not going to depart from it. And so some of us as parents have clung to that promise that we think it is. And I'll remind you again, it is not a promise. It's an observation. And that doesn't make it any less important. It just means that we need to think about it differently because it's telling us something really important. That there is value in the thing that you do as a parent. So if you're a parent, give yourself a pat in the back. Yeah, good for you, yeah. Because what you're doing is really important. And hopefully, I think most of us try to do it as best as we can. Some of us don't, and if you're in that category, I don't have anything for you today. But most of us, if some of us come from, we would look at our parents and say they weren't the greatest parent, but given the skill sets they had, given the life experiences they had, they tried their best with what they had, right? And that's important to carry that idea. But here's the question as I read this, train up a child to live the right way. In their path is the literal thing, because sometimes we think it's about a certain way, but maybe it's about their certain way. But here's the question, what's the right way? And again, people like me oftentimes will say, well, I will tell you what the right way is. And I'm going to be openly, purely transparent today. I had the best parenting advice at 2 stages of my life. The first one was before I had kids. I would sit with Lori and say, our kids are never going to do that. I would never let my kid talk to me that way, right? And then, much later in life, after they were gone, I seemed to have gained some great wisdom at that moment again. So when I talk about what's the right way, every kid, what I've learned over life, every kid is different. And I have 2 sons, and they are opposites. In fact, we were talking about it last night with one of my sons. We have dinner together every Friday evening, and we were just chatting with his family, and it reminded us of one of our oldest son was a cuddler, right? He liked to be held. He liked to be rocked to sleep. Lori would spend an hour with him, rocking, reading stories to him. Our youngest son drove Lori crazy because she would cuddle him, and he wouldn't want to go to sleep. He would fight her the whole time. Till finally one day, she said, I've had enough. She just put him in his bed, and he went instantly to sleep. Which reminds us just that whole idea that, with kids, the first one is practice, right? But even if you figure some stuff out with that first one, sometimes it's different. I have friends that have like 3 kids or 4 kids, and I just figured my kids are opposite. There's opposites are opposite, right? There can't be any more than one's this way, one's that way. But oh no, If you have 3, it's like all 3 are different, which I don't understand how that can be. Or 4, you know, 5. I think if you get over 5, you begin to see some similarities. But the question is, you know, what is the right way? And here's the thing that's a little bit scary for all of us. And you may be saying, oh, no, Mike, my parents are not my default, right? I grew up in a really bad situation. I'm not letting that happen again. And I'm glad that you recognize that and you're trying. But there is this default that gets set into us because of how we were raised, right? It's why sometimes you have opened your mouth as a parent and words have come out of your mouth that you said you would never say to your kids, but they're coming out at that moment because you have nothing else in the tool chest. And there's another aspect of this whole raise up a child, train them in the way they ought to go. And it's simply this truth that every parent, I think every person lives with, but especially parents. And that's simply this, that we can get so caught up in life and miss what's in that life. I mean, the business, I watch some of you as parents, and I think you're doing everything you can for your kids. And sometimes I think you're doing too much for your kids. Just my advice. To add to all the other advice you get, right? In fact, I saw some kids here end of last school year. They were literally laying on a couch outside my office down there, drinking their milkshakes, because our kids love our milkshakes at our poor place, right? And I stopped and I was chatting with them, and I said, you ladies, they were 2 girls, 2 sisters, and I said, you look exhausted. And they said, we are. You know, and I know a little bit about their life and their family, great life, but they are involved in so many things, right? And sometimes I think we can get so caught up in all the stuff we're trying to provide for our kids that we miss some of those moments. And it reminded me this week of a truth that if you've been a parent, you know, and that's this, that you know, you discover you're pregnant, and everybody's kind of excited, and everybody's a little bit worried because it's like, oh no, because you know this is an important life change. And in hindsight, you recognize you did not know how important of a life change that was, right? But you know, the pregnancy, you finally have the baby, and the crazy thing is, the day the mother gets pulled out in the wheelchair with a little baby, the dad, pulls up, gets out of his car, gets the baby in, gets the mother in the car, and they're driving away, and the thought that goes through everybody's mind is, how can a rational person let me take this little human being home, right? Because I have no idea what I'm going to do with this thing, right? Especially the first one, right? It's like they cry, they're not wet, they're not hungry, I don't know what to do, right? Those are my 2 options. And the first time you change, actually the first few times you change the diaper, it's like, am I supposed to kind of get in there really aggressively? I mean, we're not, doesn't this little baby have some personal boundaries I'm not supposed to invade, right? And you're overwhelmed by the whole piece of it, right? In fact, that's the word I would describe, not just bringing a child home for the first time, but at different moments in my parenting life. Overwhelming, right? Overwhelming that you got this little human being and now you are 100% responsible for them. They can't move from here to there yet, so you have to move them, right? You have to pick them up, you have to put them down, you have to hold them, you have to pat them. And then they begin to move, which changes your life again, right? I was talking to a parent last week, and they were saying that his little son is starting to crawl now. And we were just kind of laughing over how life has changed, right? Because if they don't crawl, you put them down, you walk to the kitchen and get a glass of water, you come back, they're there. Once they get mobile, they are never there any longer, right? Back when they start to walk, they're upstairs, they're outside. I mean, it just kind of gets crazy. And then you have all the other things that roll off, school years. And some of you had your kids, going to their first day of school, and their very, very first day of school. And some of it's the first day in this particular school. And it's just, everybody's crying and you're taking pictures and all that. And you're just sort of overwhelmed by the fact that they're getting older. My babies are growing up. And I love Anne Lamott's take on this whole idea. Here's what she says, this is one thing they forget to mention in most child-rearing books, that at times you will just lose your mind, period, right? It's kind of hard to sell books that just say you're going to lose your mind, right? But Here's a little bit of a scary thought if you're a parent, or maybe some good news if you're a parent. There are approximately 936 weeks from the day they are born until they graduate high school, until they get to that finish line. And some of you are still in the 900s, right? Some of you got down in the 600s, and your kids are in school, and some of you are in the 400s. Some of you are in the 50s, right? It's like the line is there. I can see it. I just don't know if I got the strength to get there, but I'm pressing forward, right? But think of it, 936 weeks, which literally which sounds like a lot, right? I mean, that is a lot. That's a lot of weeks that make a lot of years. But here's what parents know as well, right? It seems like a lot of weeks until it isn't anymore. And my experience has been that by the time your kids hit 7th grade, the pace of life and how long a second lasts shrinks dramatically, right? It just picks up and they just kind of roll through, and the next thing you know, they're all done. So here's something, let me tell you this. If you're in the middle of the stressful years of parenting, and that can be different years of parenting for different parents, right? But if you're in the middle of the stressful years of parenting, and you're sure, and you aren't sure you're going to survive, here's something I want you to remember. First of all, someday, this phase of life will end. Yeah. Everybody can say that, right? Because if you're one of the, it's like, but you got to get those phases, and we're like, oh, they're going through this phase, and you talk to other parents, oh, yeah, mine went through that, or yeah, mine's doing that, and everybody kind of, commiserates together. But think of it, someday this phase of life is going to end, and you will miss it. As much as you think, no, Mike. You don't know what phase I'm in right now. I am not going to miss this. And there's parts of it that, honestly, you're going to be glad are gone. But there's other aspects of that phase because those phases are so key and so important. So here's just my encouragement. If you kind of find yourself in one of those really stressful ones, don't miss it now. In fact, it's the thing I was talking to Pastor Marilyn about this week. Our whole family ministries is built on this structure of idea phases, of helping you and your kids in each of these phases, that at each age, she's thought this thing through. This is about what your kids are going to experience when they come to kids' church. And this is what they're going to experience when they go to their breakout groups after, their circles after it, that at this stage they're going to learn this, at this stage they're going to be developing this. And so it's just important to remind yourself that it's just a phase. Not only is it a phase, phase means growth. And all of us want our kids to grow. Some of us want our kids to grow up and leave the home. That's a whole other day that we're not talking about today, right? But here's my simple takeaway from that. Just enjoy it. In fact, out in the lobby as you leave today, every week there's all these, on the wall on this side, there's a bunch of these phase cards. Have you seen those? If you have kids, you ought to stop by there. It was one of those tools that when I look at what Pastor Marilyn has resourced, it would have been so helpful. It would have been helpful knowing when my kids were going into 6th grade that, this is what they're experiencing. This is what to expect. This is why they're doing what they do. Because it's like, why is my kid acting like this? There's a reason for it. It has to do with growth. It has to do with development, all those kinds of pieces. But here's the thing I want to tell you if you are a parent. And this is maybe the most important thing you're going to hear today. Are you ready? So if you aren't, don't kind of just keep beating yourself up over it. Now, don't try not to be perfect. So let me put that caveat in there, right? But remind yourself there's no perfect way. In fact, let me ask you a deep theological question that's really important. I mean, right? It's like, if we're supposed to train up a child in the way they go, which example do we follow? Because there isn't a whole lot to choose. Now, if you were smart, you'd say, well, hey, let's go to Jesus' family, right? Mary. I mean, God handpicks Mary and Joseph, and they make this whole crazy thing at the start. This, she gets pregnant by God thing, which is if you're not religious or you're not kind of a Christian or you're not, you're just checking this out. You're thinking that's kind of a weird thing. We admit that's a weird thing, but sometimes weird things doesn't mean it's not a true thing. It's not how our minds work. It's not how life works. And if you read the story in the Bible, it was a hard thing for them, even religious people, at times to accept. But you have this whole picture that God handpicks this young girl, and she's probably in her kind of middle teens, right? And she's got this husband who has to be convinced that what she says is true, right? But they have this family, they develop. And I mean, wouldn't God pick a perfect family to raise this child in? So let's look at that story. In fact, it's only found in the part of the Bible called Luke. And Luke, as I reminded you before, was not one of Jesus' immediate 12 followers. He's a guy who's a little bit later as a follower of Jesus, but he's a guy that's an investigative reporter. He goes out and hears stories. So he picks up stories that hadn't been picked up. And my take is he probably got this story because the disciples aren't sitting around by saying, hey, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your childhood. They don't think to ask those questions. But Luke does some investigation. He hears some stories about Jesus' childhood. And here's where we pick it up over in Luke chapter 2, verse 41. And Luke simply says, as he heard the story, that every year, Jesus' family went to Jerusalem for the big Passover festival, the big feast that they had. And it would have been a huge thing for them. It would have been the yearly trip. Sometimes some of you have a place you go every year, and you look forward to that, and it's like the best time of the year. This would have been one of those things. They come from this little village. They're going to the big city, and it's going to be filled with people they haven't seen in a year or two, or maybe a few years because so many people are there that you don't get a chance to see everybody. But it's going to be a high celebration. It is sort of this high fun festival they have, a reminder about what God not only did, but what God has done for us as a people, and what is God doing for us as a people. So every year they go, Luke tells us, and when Jesus was 12 years old, Luke tells us, they went to the feast like they always did. Now, the 12 years old is a little bit of significant because in Judaism, when a boy gets 12 years old, he now becomes, anybody know the answer? He's a man. Now, if you have a 12-year-old son, I want you to look at him. You recognize sometimes we just pick these things to have a line, right? A demarcation of when that transition happens, right? But that's what. So now Jesus has become a young man, and they've gone to Jerusalem. He's 12 years old, and maybe that explains sort of what happens next. So they're at the feast, and after the feast days are over, they start home. They all head home because they've had a great time, and they're in these big groups of people that have come from, their village and maybe some other villages along the way that are close to them. And I imagine they're as they're going, they're just, reliving what's happened over the last few days. The people they've seen, and did you see the temple? Did you see the lights they had? And did you hear the rabbis talk about this and the scribes talk about this? And, do you remember that food? That was some of the best Passover. They're just going off on all the things. But as they're started home, Luke tells us, but there's a twist. The boy Jesus stayed behind Jerusalem. But the parents didn't know. Which every parent right now is thinking, he did not. Because there would be some explaining to do, right? But they're going on. Jesus has stayed back. They think everything's great. In fact, Luke says they were thinking that Jesus was with them, so they travel for a whole day. Because it's a big group and people around, it's for some of us, remember all of us, we always think our time was a better time than our current time, much safer, much more calm, right? But have you ever been with a group and a big group of people and you trust everybody? It's just a thing. And so everybody's traveling, everybody's talking. I'm sure he's over there with his friends, and they go along for a whole day. They do that until they begin to look for him among his friends and family. I'm assuming this is about bedtime. I figure, okay, we had this great trip, and now everybody's settling in. We got our places we're going to sleep. We got where Jesus is going to sleep. We need to go find him. We start asking around, and they discover he's not there. I love how Luke says it. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him there. I want you to picture that moment. You got Joseph, you got Mary, right? If this goes like maybe at least how my mind works, they've looked for him, they've looked everywhere for him. Oh, I don't know where he's at. Mary's beside herself. Joseph's been trying to look. And Mary's like, we have to go find him. We have to leave now. And Joseph's like, I think we got to get a good night's sleep first. We're going to be much better when we get back, when we're sort of rested, right? We're more sharp. And I have to imagine Mary gave him one of those, like, just my imagination, but Mary gave him one of those looks that you women sometimes give your husband. You know that look? Like, to which I imagine Joseph was like, I'll get some water, we'll get some food, we'll just walk, right? So they've gone out, traveled a day, now they travel back a day, and then Luke tells us that after 3 days, and we don't know if that's 3 days total of day walking out, day walking back, and a day looking, or when they get back, it's 3 more days, but it's been a long time since they've seen Jesus. Their little boy who is now a man surviving in the big city, and they've thought all the stuff that we as parents think when our kids haven't now today answered their phone, right? Answered our text, aren't where they're supposed to be, and our minds just go crazy. And they've had lots of times to imagine all those things. But after 3 days, they find Jesus. He is sitting in the temple, and he's among the teachers, and he's listening to them, and he's asking questions of them, and they're having this sort of exchange of ideas. And I think the story reminds us again of what is so true for all of us. That we can get so caught up in life and miss what's in that life, right? I didn't finish the whole story. You ought to go back and read how Jesus responds, because it would be interesting to put yourself in how you would have that discussion with your child if your child answered the same way, but that's a whole other story. We're not going to get into that. I got to cram all this into one message today, all right? So let me just talk for a moment to those of you who are still have children at home, still actively parenting. And let me just share something. I'm actually going to help you out. There's a book, Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown, Gifts of Imperfect Parenting, because we're all imperfect parents, right? Yeah, it's not hard, folks. It's right there. But here's 6 things. I encourage you, it's this audiobook. You can get it. You can listen to it on the way to work. That's some great stuff. Brené Brown, what I appreciate about her, it's not just sort of her insights, but it's also insights based on research. And these are conclusions after lots and lots of research. She's a brain specialist, become a great author and speaker. So here's 6 things from Brené Brown from this book, maybe saving you the money buying it, maybe encourage you to get it. First of all, the impact that using shame versus guilt has on our children and on us. When I heard her talk about this, it reminded me of how I needed to rethink how I see those 2 words. Because I don't know about you, sometimes I associate them together, but she sees them as 2 totally opposite things. In fact, she sees one of them as really bad, and one of them as having a lot of potential for good. Shame's bad, guilt is good. Because there are times we ought to feel guilty, right? And there's times we ought to feel shameful, right? Good answer, folks, right? Yes to guilt, no to shame. So notice how she writes it. This is a long quote. There is a profound difference between shame and guilt. I believe that guilt is adaptive and helpful. It's holding something we've done or failed to do up against our values and feeling physical or psychological discomfort. In other words, we messed up, and now I have to bear the responsibility of messing up. And there's a good moment for that. There's a benefit for that. That's how we're wired. But she goes on, she says, I define shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. It's when we do something and we say, oh, I'm such an idiot, right? Or when you've had, your kid does something, you say, why are you doing that, I keep telling you, what's the matter with you? You don't know what you're doing, and you just kind of go off on them. And it's not using guilt and letting guilt do its work in their life, but it's adding shame to life. And she says, I love it. I don't believe shame is helpful or productive. We think it's going to be motivating. I'm going to shame somebody, and they're going to respond, they're going to push back, and they're going to straighten up. And she says, no, that's not how it works. After all this research, it's not how it works. In fact, she says, I think shame is much more likely to be the source of destructive, hurtful behavior than the solution or cure. In fact, she says it not only impacts our kids when we use it, but it impacts back on us, because as we begin to use that kind of language, we become comfortable with that language. Go read her book, you'll find out a little more. The other thing I learned from her, she talks about the importance of gratitude. And for her, it's not just simply telling our kids you need to be grateful, you need to be thankful for all the stuff we provide for you, which, by the way, kids, if you're in this space today, your parents do provide an incredible amount of stuff for you. I mean, think what your job is. You go to school, you're supposed to learn, you get to see your friends, you get to hang out, you have some recess, people provide you with food. Your parents have to do all the stuff, right? They have to get you home with your head, the roof, the food, pay for things, get your clothes, get all that stuff. And the idea of gratitude, she reminds us from all this research, is that it's modeled and caught more than it is taught and told. It's not about telling our kids, you need to be more grateful. It's actually modeling gratefulness in our life and getting involved in things that bring up that idea of gratefulness that really changes things. She says to help our kids set and navigate boundaries. And what she means by that is we ought to have structure and rules in our homes. In fact, she goes on and says, kids are hardwired to push boundaries, and it's our job as parents to hold them. And if that's true, and again, she has a lot of research to show it, if we don't have any boundaries and kids are hardwired to push against boundaries, what happens to the kids? There's nothing there. In fact, research has shown that having structure, having boundaries actually communicates something really important to your kids. That you actually care about them. In spite of the fact that they're like, oh, you're the worst parent in the world. All my friends get to do this, to which you say, if your kids jumped off that's right, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? It's been there forever, right? Since the beginning of time when they built bridges. But in fact, she has some interesting research. She actually did a number of different groups of kids with this, and they had the kids talk about how strict their parents were. And they noticed the kids that got most engaged in the conversation were kids who had come from homes with boundaries. Kids who didn't have any boundaries were silent through the whole discussions because they didn't have anything to contribute. And they didn't have that same sense the other kids. In fact, she said that the kids would get into sort of a competition of whose parents were stricter than the other parents. Oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you what my parents do, right? And then, well, let me, and they go back. And it's just this idea of boundaries. And again, you have to be smart about that. And a little advice is those boundaries can change over time. In fact, should change over time, right? Another thing she pops in there is that simply, it's not our job to be their friends. That doesn't mean we can't be friendly to them, but they have friends, right? And we hope that we can develop into friends. But at most of our moments in our kids when we're raising them, it's not our job to be their friends as much as it is to be their parent. And that doesn't mean not being, again, nice and caring to them. Another thing she reminds us of that we all already know is simply this, that actions are more powerful than words. And we all know that, right? But as much as we know it, we still think that our words are really powerful. In fact, it was what our parents did, not what they required, that determined the trajectory of our relationship with them. Think about that for a moment. Think about the relationship you have with your parents. If they're here right now, just kind of look at them and smile and just give them a thumbs up, no matter what it was, right? Just want to help you out a little bit. But isn't it true? Isn't it true how you think about your parents now, how you respect your parents now? How you want to be around your parents now is directly related, not to the stuff they maybe told you or said was right, but it's really about what they did, not what they said. It wasn't about these things that they said were so important, but didn't seem to be that much in their life. And here's the crazy thing, which is, right? I mean, I have flashbacks. I can think back to moments that I deeply regret when I was raising my boys. Moments when I was over the top, moments when I was inappropriate, moments that what I was saying and doing sometimes weren't matching, and sometimes they were matching, but they were not matching in a good way. So let's go on to the next one. Another thing is to engage in play and creativity with our kids, even when they get older. This is an incredible research that's been sort of gaining some strength over the last few years. Do you know that they say about the average of about, I think it's fourth grade, that our kids stop being creative? And again, I think it sort of gets squeezed out of them. There's school expectations and there's extracurricular expectations, and it's like at some point we have to get them to be more serious about life. But she says when we miss out the idea of creativity and playing with our kids, and not just, I love that part, even when they get older, this idea of engaging in something, because what that does for us is, as a family, that we still enjoy, we still stop to take time, we still we get creative, we play, we do stuff that brings us together, as opposed to, did you do your chores, did you do your homework, and what time are you going to be home, and all those things that just are functions of life. So those are the encouragements and the 6 things for Brene Brown. Again, hope you kind of listen to what she has to say. I think she's a brilliant lady. But I want to talk to another group of folks here while I have you today. And that's for some of us who are beyond week 937 and we're still parenting. And the reality is, not we're still parenting, but we are still parenting. It just looks different at this stage. And as I was thinking about this week, it's true. I think about my mom, who is 80. She'll be 89 this year. And there's still times when I'll call her up and I'll kind of get her to take. She was a nurse. She's my go-to nurse. Mom, I got this thing. Mom, this hurts. Mom, what do you think, right? Thankfully, she doesn't tell me to take 2 aspirin. She'll just say, well, it could be this, could be that. You need to go see a doctor. Which is like, Mom, that's why I called you. I don't want to go see a doctor. I just want you to tell me what's wrong, right? But even at that stage, still parenting, right? It's just differently. And the big word that's out there now is emerging adults. Sounds so serious, right? So if you're still parenting emerging adults, let me ask you a question and give you some advice, all right? In fact, this question you ought to ask even before you have emerging adults, if your kids are small. But this may be the most important thing I say today, so I want everybody to pay attention, right? This is a question that if you will ask it and you will answer it, and always remind yourself of the answer, it will help you navigate so much in your parenting. Are you ready for it? I got no other place to be, so are you ready for it? I was trying to build it up. I mean, a big question. This is the best thing you're ever going to see. Thank you. Don't make me work so hard. All right, here's the question. How you answer that question and how you remember the answer to that question, how you remind yourself of that question, will help you in some of those moments when you're pushed from, let's be honest, all the buttons they've pushed, where you have been clear about the boundaries and they have stepped over those boundaries, and you're going to bring World War III on just to remind them that these rules aren't supposed to be broken. The answer to this question, if it's yes, that may not be yes. If it's not yes, I have nothing for you. But if it's yes, it can really help you navigate some of those things because it keeps a bigger goal. And as I've told you before, if you don't know where you're heading, you'll never know when you get there, and you never know how you're getting there, right? But if my goal is at the end of the day, I want to have a relationship with my child, then that's going to affect what I do right now in this moment. What I say, what I don't say, how I act. So let me give you just a quick bunch of advice that you can take or leave. Love them, even if they're not making what we think are the best decisions. Because, again, if you want to have a relationship with, probably smart to love them, right? Another bit of advice. I don't think I have to expound on that one, do I? Because here's the truth, and I don't want us to miss this truth. The truth is, our children will do things differently from us. And that might not be good or bad, it just is the reality. And it may be bad, at least according to you, and it may be bad according to all of us. But also may be good even though we don't see it that way because we haven't thought of it that way. This one I think is such an important key. If you've told them once, you've told them. If every time you see them, you have to remind them of what you've told them before, you will not have a relationship with your child. I mean, you remember when you were younger and your parents kept saying the same thing over and over, and you would roll your eyes. And then after you got caught doing that, you would roll them in your head. But it's like, why? You're always saying the same thing. Listen, if your kid's doing something you don't approve of and you've told them you don't approve of it, they know you don't approve of it. You don't need to keep telling them you don't approve of it. Because all that's going to do is irritate both of you, which are not very healthy for a relationship. And the last one is simply to stop parenting and shift to mentoring. That it's no longer your job to fix all those things, to remind them of all those things. Now you serve as a mentor, that when they ask questions, when they ask advice, you can give advice. Until then, you don't have anything they want. Because then you're just getting in their business, putting your stuff, you're still trying to parent, you're still trying to direct them. And if they haven't been directed at that moment, they'll find their direction on their own. Again, Anne Lamott, a great quote that I think all of us parents need to remind ourselves. And especially, I think, when we begin to hit those early teen and teen years and beyond. That's our job, to be dispensable. So caring for our kids means not giving them all the answers, letting them sometimes figure out those answers themselves. Check out this quote. This is from a guy that's an author and a psychologist. He says, kids' days are full of artificial activities with artificial consequences resulting in artificial maturity. Maybe put it another way, maybe in my language, don't be afraid to allow your children to fail. And I know it kills you as a parent to let your child get hurt or go through something hard and have to face all the consequences of it. But it'll be the best thing for everybody. Because all of us have choices in life, and then all of us make decisions about those choices, and then all of us have consequences from those decisions based on those choices. Sometimes those consequences are good. Sometimes they're not so good, but that's how life works. And if we can provide an opportunity for our kids to fail, especially in a safe environment, they will be much better prepared to face an unsafe environment. See, the experience of failing and learning how to move forward is a lesson that will take them far in life. And if we protect them and don't let them to ever fail, ever to feel how that feels, if we don't teach them how to both win and lose and to do both well, they will have to discover that on their own in a world that is not as caring, as loving as you are. Back to Anne Lamott and just her insights. She says, you've got to learn to let go and let your children fall and fail. If you try to protect them from hurt and always rush to their side with Band-Aids, they won't learn about life and what is true, what works, what helps, and what are real consequences of certain kinds of behavior. When they do get hurt, which they will, they won't know how to take care of their grown selves. They won't even know where the aspirin is kept. She always has a little bit of funny at the end. But it's true, isn't it? There is so much about preparing our kids to leave home, right? Again, some of us are, after that week 937, and we've made it to the finish line, and we got them through high school. And it is a high school graduation. All the parents are high-fiving or fist bumping or elbow bumping if you got masks on, the whole stuff we're going through. But it's like, hey, this is great because y'all feel like you've made the finish line, woo, they are done and they're on their own. They're adults now. And then you discover maybe that isn't quite how it is. Because now even in this whole adulting phase and adjusting to that, there's so many things I think we assume that they have picked up. And it seemed like such common sense things because they're such a regular part of your life and my life that we forget that they haven't had to do those things, so they don't really know those things. Think about it. Does your child know how to wash their own clothes? Iron their own clothes? Do they know how to not just take the trash from underneath the sink to out in the can, but actually take the can out and put it out and then pick it up later? Do they know how to go to a grocery store and figure out a meal? Do they know how to open a bank account? Do they know how to shop for insurance? Do they know how to shop for an apartment? Because that's the first sign of them making that step, right? Do they know how to change their oil in their car? Do they know how to check the oil in their car? Do they know how to change a flat tire? Because let me tell you, the time to learn is not at midnight out on a dark road someplace when they got mom or dad on the phone saying, how do I do this, right? Tough to FaceTime in that moment. But there's so many things that we just assume our kids will figure out. And what if we started a little bit earlier? In fact, my take is start earlier and oftener to help them transition to becoming more functional so that when they get to that stage, it's not all so overwhelming. It's just a little overwhelming. As I told you at the start, everybody is happy to be a critic. In fact, sometimes our family members are critics of how we raise our kids or what we've done or haven't done for them. But here's the thing I want to remind you as we wrap this up today. It's not the critic who counts. Because you're always going to have critics. If you're like me, you have critics within your own brain. But they're not the ones that count. Not everyone's opinion matters. And for somebody here today, that may just be the best bit of advice. Because it doesn't. Not everybody has equal voice in your life, nor should they have equal voice in your life. But if you don't have a goal for your child, and maybe you do, maybe your goal is, to have them grow up and be, good people of society, some people that will contribute to society. Maybe it's about, that they'll grow up and they'll marry a nice girl or a nice guy and, they'll have a great family and they'll provide all that stuff. Maybe your goal is for your kid to be a doctor. If it is, stop it. So I think a better goal is to help them be who they are rather than what they do. But if you don't have a goal, let me just offer a goal to you, even if it's really early in, your week 930 in your life. It's simply this. The goal is to raise kids who want to be with us when they don't have to be. Because at some point that becomes really, really, really important to you. And when they actually want to be with you, it's kind of surprising because it's like, I never wanted to be with my parents. Why are you here, right? But it means that you did something right. In a job that you're not getting paid for, in a job that maybe sometimes you didn't even really apply for or think it all the way through. Most of us hadn't think it all the way through, right? But you're doing something right in a job that is designed by its very nature to have lots of ways and lots of moments to do things so wrong. So let me ask you a couple questions as we wrap this up. What if our current approach isn't helping us accomplish our ultimate goal? And I want you to hear really clearly from me, that's not a criticism. That's just, I want to ask you a question. That if you feel like maybe I've gotten off track, or maybe I haven't really thought this thing through, or maybe I'm caught up in my own, this is what it has to be. What if that isn't not only not working, it isn't where you want to end up? And if the answer is, it isn't, then maybe to think about some other ways to do that. What would it look like to rethink how we parent? Because what I've discovered, and not only from my own life, but talking to lots of other people, is that every stage you need to be rethinking how you parent. When they're little babies, you parent one way. When they get mobile, you parent another way. When they go off to school, you parent another way. When they hit those lovely tween years, you parent another way. When they hit the best stage of life, when your kids are so connected to you and just sit down and talk to you for hours on end in their teenage years. You need to rethink how you parent. Then when you finally hit that finish line that seems like it keeps moving, it's rethinking again of how you parent. But what would it look like? What would it look like to enjoy the phase we're in? I'm going to turn a little bit here. What if the phase you're in is like one of those phases and you're like, but what if you stop instead of, you said, hey, hold it here. This is happening because growth is happening. That some stuff that's actually helpful is happening. It may not look helpful, not feel helpful, but it's actually helpful. This is a stage that things are going through. And kids begin to get those stages. They get independent. They talk back. Sometimes they talk back because of how we've talked to them. That's a whole other topic. But what if we could learn to see it as a phase and enjoy it for what it is as opposed to grinding through it for what it is? And here's the simple thing as we wrap up today. We're here to partner with you. I was talking to Pastor Marilyn yesterday about this, that we have tons of resources. We have tons of people who are committed to not just loving your kids, but helping them get to know Jesus so that we hope that they will fall in love with Jesus and follow Jesus. But there's lots of other people. You don't have to do this alone. And we don't want you to do it alone, but we do want you to do it as good as you possibly can. And we want to partner with making you the hero in your kid's life. We don't want to be the hero in your kid's life. We want you to be the hero. So there's some great resources. There's a newsletter. Pastor Marilyn has a bunch of different newsletters for all different ages. You ought to check that out. So that's my wrap up today's message. All right, here we go. I got some big news for you. So we got big stuff coming. We were talking about a lot of stuff this month. We have some big stuff coming. And you probably have noticed a little bit if you've driven in the last couple of weeks. We have a new fence out front. This week, we actually had 2 huge commercial HVAC units installed. So if you go upstairs, we actually have cold air, which we didn't have the last few weeks. And you notice we didn't have to come ask you for any money. I talked about that a couple weeks ago, right? Once we paid off our mortgage, we said we would free up money to do these things. And so it's nice to be able to take care of some very significant cost, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, as you came in, you also probably see all these things that look like those things right out here, right? And if you thought, I wonder what's going on, and how come Mike hasn't said anything yet? So let me tell you what's going on and why I haven't said anything yet. And I was hesitant to even say something today because we're not at the finish line yet. But 4 years ago this fall, we started raising money and raised $150,000 to put up a brand new building dedicated to our youth and young adults out here in the... Yeah. And it was great, and we had Eddie Sacalo had approached me about the idea, and we went to work on it. We kind of came up with stuff. We thought we could do this, and we got started. Then we discovered there was a lot more stuff for the county, so we actually had James Zacharias, who has stepped along in these past 4 years to help us do that. But I haven't said much over the last 4 years because there hasn't been anything to tell you. Because we have been waiting and waiting and waiting. 4 years worth of waiting. I won't go into the whole detail, right? But we have waited a long time waiting for the county. We had a request sit on somebody's desk for 8 months. Howard County is known not to be very friendly to churches. We would agree with that. But the good news is, we think we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting things marked off. We have one last one, which is the final, you guys are good. Crazy thing is, I don't understand how building works. We got the approval to start digging, but we didn't get approval for why we're digging. But every week we seem to be getting closer, and so you actually saw a big tractor out there that got delivered yesterday. Over the next few weeks, it's going to start changing. I don't know how quick it's going to go, but I imagine by sometime this fall, we will have a new building out there, which is great news. So here's what I need you to know about that. 2 pieces. One is, if you are I can't remember what it's called now. An electrician or plumber, but you're like somebody has their license or certified or Whatever everybody's mumbling out there, that's what we need, all right? So if you're one of those things, come see me. If you're willing to help us out in the project, we've already gone through the $150,000. We are going to raise more money towards this, so this will be a thing you will hear more about. Nobody clap? I just want to be fair with you, right? But I have some better news coming up in just a moment, or some good news, I should say. So we're doing that. Also, at some point over the next few weeks, we will come back and have a list to fill out if you'd like to help with the building project. You know, there'll be times to put up sheetrock. There'll be times to put down floor. If you know how to do those things, if you know how to paint, we can use people. I think the more of us that contribute to it helps us keep the cost down so that we can actually get it all done. And all of them will have had a part in doing this. So it's exciting times that over the next few weeks should see a dramatic transformation out there. The good news is we've already bought the building. It's been waiting for us for almost 4 years. So that was good because we bought it and the price has gone way up. And that's another piece of this whole process that though we filed 4 years ago, now they've said, oh, now you have to bring everything up to code now. So we had to change a bunch of plans. So long story, that's what's happening. But another thing that you're going to notice over the next few weeks, big thing is actually in our space that we meet in every week. If you look at the carpet, that's one of the reasons we keep the lights dark. I mean, this carpet is needing to be replaced for lots of years. And we've just had other things that are more important. And, you know, we're trying to be smart with money. And we got to, use the money we have. Again, because so many of you helped us pay off the mortgage last year. We told you it was going to free up money. It's freed up money to do more outreach things, to do some creative projects. And it's freeing up money to do stuff in here. So in a few, over the next probably month and a half, walls will be painted. New carpet here, new carpet here. It's going to look like a brand new space in here. So that's we're excited about that. Yeah. And we're not going to have to raise any money for that because, again, we've been budgeting. We've been waiting to this time of the year that we've built up enough reserves over the course of giving that now we can start to spend this stuff. So, again, thank you. Those of you that regularly give to our local church budget, you really do fund everything that happens in and through New Hope. So on that said, I hope you watch some community life and things happening around us.
Friday Night Lights returns next Friday evening at 6:30 for both middle schoolers and high schoolers. While they'll be meeting in separate groups, they're meeting at the same time here on campus. Middle schoolers and high schoolers, we hope to see you there.
Have you thought about getting involved in finding a place to serve? Stop by the lobby today at the volunteer table for information about where you might fit in, or go to newhopefulton.org/serve.
Our co-ed scouting groups start next Saturday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Our adventurous group is for ages 2 to 9, and our pathfinders cover ages 10 to 18. We'd love to have your child be part of the experience.
If you'd like to have someone pray for you and with you, we'd love to do that. Join us up front at the conclusion of this worship service.
Hey, thanks for being here today. Join us next week, brand new two-part message series about being a follower of Jesus and what that might look like. Have a great day, folks. Enjoy what's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. And for those of you that get Monday off, good for you. Yeah, 'cause he's